This is a story that has been buried by the tides of history. A tragedy of such immense scale, it's almost impossible to comprehend. It's the story of the deadliest shipwreck ever recorded. A disaster that claimed more lives than the Titanic and Lusitania combined. Yet, for decades, it remained a whisper in the footnotes of the Second World War. This is the story of the MV Wilhelm. Our story begins in the final, brutal winter of World War II, January 1945. The Red Army is advancing relentlessly from the east, a massive Soviet offensive that has shattered the German front lines. Millions of German civilians in East Prussia are trapped, caught between the advancing Soviets and the icy Baltic Sea. A desperate, massive evacuation is launched. Operation Hannibal. It would become the largest maritime evacuation in history. A frantic race against time to ferry soldiers and terrified civilians to the relative safety of Western Germany. At the heart of this operation was a ship that once symbolized peace and leisure. The MV Wilhelm. Before the war, she was the pride of the Nazi strength through Joy program. A magnificent cruise liner built, not for the wealthy elite, but for the German worker, with a swimming pool, a gymnasium, and beautiful common rooms. She was a floating paradise, a symbol of a promised future. But by 1945, that idyllic past was a distant memory. The Gustloff, painted in drab naval gray and armed with anti-aircraft guns, was now a hospital and transport ship, moored in the port of Gdynia, which the Germans called. As chaos engulfed the region, streams of refugees poured into the port, their faces etched with fear and exhaustion. They came on foot, in carts, through snow and biting wind, all seeking passage on the Gustloff. The ship, designed to hold just under 1,900 people, was soon overflowing. Official records were a mess, but estimates suggest that on January 30th, 1945, more than 10,000 souls were crammed aboard. Over half of them were children. They filled every deck, every cabin, every hallway, even the emptied swimming pool. For them, the Gustloff was not just a ship. It was a lifeboat, an ark of hope, promising salvation from the horrors of the war. They huddled together for warmth, unaware that their journey to safety would lead them into the heart of a nightmare. As the Wilhelm Gustloff, dangerously overloaded, and with only a single torpedo boat as an escort, steamed into the frigid, dark waters of the Baltic Sea. It was being hunted. Not far away, the Soviet submarine S-13, commanded by Captain Alexander Marinescu, was on patrol. Marinescu was a skilled and aggressive commander, and through his periscope, he spotted the massive silhouette of the Gustloff. He saw a large armed enemy transport ship, a legitimate military target in the brutal calculus of war. He had no way of knowing the true nature of the ship's cargo, thousands of men, women, and children seeking refuge. Just after 9 p.m., Captain Marinescu gave the order to fire. 3 torpedoes sliced through the black water towards the unsuspecting liner. The first torpedo struck the bow, sealing the watertight doors and trapping the crew who were off duty in their quarters. The second hit amidships, right in the area of the swimming pool, where hundreds of women from the Naval Auxiliary were quartered. The impact was devastating. The third and final torpedo ripped into the engine room, cutting all power and plunging the entire ship into immediate, terrifying darkness. The scene on board descended into absolute chaos. Panic erupted. The ship listed violently, sending people, furniture, and equipment sliding across the decks. Screams echoed through the darkened corridors. In the sub-zero temperatures, lifeboats were frozen to their davits, and many that were launched were either overcrowded and capsized or crushed against the ship's tilting hull. People were trampled in the desperate stampedes for the exits. Many were trapped below decks, with no hope of escape. Those who managed to make it to the open decks faced a new kind of hell. They had to choose between the chaos on the tilting ship and the lethal, freezing water of the Baltic Sea, where survival could be measured in mere minutes. The water temperature was around 4 degrees Celsius, but with the wind chill, it was closer to -18. It was a choice no one should ever have to make. The Wilhelm Gustloff sank in less than an hour, disappearing beneath the waves of the Baltic. The rescue efforts that followed were heroic, but tragically insufficient. The accompanying torpedo boat and other nearby German vessels pulled as many people from the water as they could, but for thousands, it was too late. Of the more than 10,000 people on board, it's estimated that over 9,000 perished. That's more than 6 times the number of lives lost on the Titanic. The sheer scale of the loss is staggering, a testament to the brutal, indiscriminate nature of war. For the survivors, the night was a blur of unimaginable horror, a memory of screams, freezing water, and the sight of their loved ones lost to the dark sea. So why has this, the deadliest maritime disaster in history, been so largely forgotten? There are several reasons. First, it happened in the final, chaotic months of the war in Europe. The world was saturated with news of death and destruction on an unprecedented scale. The fall of Berlin, the liberation of concentration camps, the death of leaders. These events dominated the headlines. The sinking of a single ship, even with such a catastrophic loss of life, was lost in the noise. Second, the victims were Germans. In the immediate aftermath of a war started by Nazi Germany, there was little global sympathy for German suffering. The world was grappling with the horrors of the Holocaust and the immense devastation the Nazis had inflicted upon Europe. The story of the Gustloff was complex and morally gray. It didn't fit the simple narrative of good versus evil that people needed and wanted at the time. And finally, 4 decades within Germany itself, the topic was taboo. Discussing German victimhood was seen as an attempt to downplay or excuse the crimes of the Nazi regime. It was a painful, complicated part of their own history that many preferred not to confront. It wasn't until the publication of Günter Grasse's novel, Crabwalk in 2002, that the story of the Wilhelm Gustloff truly entered mainstream public consciousness, forcing a long overdue conversation. The story of the Wilhelm Gustloff is a powerful and heartbreaking reminder that in war, there are no simple stories. It's a tragedy that transcends nationality and politics. It's a story about people, about mothers, fathers, and thousands of children whose hopes for a future were extinguished in the icy depths of the Baltic Sea. By remembering them, we don't diminish the suffering of others. We simply acknowledge the full, devastating human cost of conflict. Their story deserves to be told, to be heard, and to be remembered. Thank you for watching. If you found this story meaningful, please like and subscribe for more chapters from our shared past.